The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. And away we grow. Welcome one and all to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We got a great episode for you. We got it in studio, a family episode. We got me and Austin, the ace of audio. How's it going there, Austin?
Hello, and welcome back to the show, everybody. It's the best time of the week. And Kevin, we've got a special guest.
We got a super special guest. So, of course, I'm your host, Kevin Jordan, and we've got the best guest, someone I'm so excited to share with people. We've had him on the podcast before. We've got Justin Davis, the Neanderthal himself of Neanderthal Farms from Fair Oaks, California. He's an urban farmer known as the Pickle King, but they might just call you the Mater King, too, because you grow quite some pretty good tomatoes.
Yeah, I can go back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. And so Justin is making time for us. We're going to pick his brain, learn so much from you, what you do. Justin, did I get your credits right? You're Neanderthal Farms, you're an urban farmer. I know you're a permaculture enthusiast as well.
I think you hit all the marks, man. All the boxes are checked.
There we go.
Yeah.
So let's fill our listeners in. So you are an urban farmer. I mean, you're growing in your backyard. It is a backyard farm, but it's pretty decent size. Like you said, you grow 300 tomatoes, not to mention all the cucumbers you grow and various other products and produce that you grow. I'm curious, what were you doing with all that produce? Because it's pretty cool. I think it's worth sharing.
Yeah, totally. So usually we set up in front of my house. We'll set up on the Saturday, Sundays, 8 to 12, 8 to 1.
Your neighbors must love you.
Yeah, until we sell out usually. And we keep it up with that. And then we're our local restaurants in Old Fair Oaks, Shangri-La. And
Shout out.
Yeah, and we're trying to work with a couple other ones that we've gotten consulting done with. So this year should be another big year for us to go in. But last year was mainly getting out to the community, the people, and then trying to save up enough for my family to kind of store away from the winter like little squirrels. And
absolutely,
nothing worse than not having some good tomatoes in the wintertime. So even if they're frozen, I'm happy.
Oh, so how do you preserve them?
Yeah, so freezing is usually, you're never going to be able to have them fresh sliced. That's all. You can't really preserve a tomato in that way. So as long as you could have them frozen, you still have good sauces.
Oh, yeah.
And you could do gazpacho. There's still options for a good fresh tasting tomato from the garden, even if it's frozen. But yeah, sadly, no tomato sandwiches in December here in Sacramento.
It gets me all the more excited for the spring and summer.
Yeah, exactly.
That first tomato sandwich, when you're making that sandwich, and the best part is the tomato.
That's all it is, man. Salt, pepper, mayo, and a good white bread, and some thick sliced tomatoes, and I'm a happy man.
That's good stuff.
Get me all fired up.
You've got a lot of tomatoes going right now, right? You said that 60 by 60 plot. Is that all full up?
So if we want to get into the good, happy news, we could kind of...
So you got some good news for us?
Big news. Yeah, I kind of just learned about this on Sunday. So this is...
Dude, do tell.
So our backyard, we've had about 0.7 of an acre that we've been growing on for now. And there was a horse pasture that was connected to my property.
Isn't that how you were getting some of your manure?
Yes. And now that horse pasture is open for lease from my landlord. So we now are up to 1.5 acres. So we got 1.5 acres on the property now.
Wow.
We've gained all that property on the left side. So stuff is going to be tripling in process of pickling cucumbers, tomatoes, corn, melons, small pumpkin patch for the community. Big things in the works.
You're going to have to get your kid employed.
Yes. She's 5 now and I got a 5 and a 3-year-old.
Oh,
so
right
I think
on.
I'm working them up perfect timing,
There you go.
Yeah.
I got a couple of 1-year-olds. They're ready. They can walk now.
His kids too.
Let them know they can come on over, man.
That'd be awesome. How's the soil on the other side, and what are you going to do to kind of prepare that?
The soil is absolutely phenomenal. It's been a horse pasture for about 13 years now, and it usually only had about 2 to 3 horses on it at a time. So not too worked like to where it's compacted, but the actual manure and the years of it getting
All that
worked
organic
in,
matter just
it
piling
is
up.
absolutely phenomenal. We walked it yesterday, and I took some soil samples and kind of checked out in certain areas of the property, high, low, middle, and seeing what's what and where. And I got to say, every handful was full of worms. So that's
exciting.
That's a great sign right there.
That's usually not the start for a garden.
No, usually you have to work years and years to get to that, like my original plots, but it's pretty much set in stone. So we're gonna have get it tilled up this year, which we're a no-till farm. But when you're starting on such a big original plot like that, especially when people are starting in-ground plant, it's always nice to get that initial break in the ground, and then you could work your permaculture aspects from there and kind of really work with the no-till and stacking. But it's always nice to get that initial break and then work from there and get your rows worked out.
Just speed up all that organic
Especially
matter.
on such a little bit of a bigger property, because this is like tripling what we have right
exciting.
now. So
Yeah, wow.
Congrats, man.
Thanks,
That's
man.
awesome.
Yeah, so
What a
really
come
huge
up.
news, and been waiting a long time. We've been there for 11 years, and now we got this.
So what are we looking forward to? What are you actually going to do with all that space? How are you going to utilize it? And what are you planning on growing this summer?
So this year, we're actually going to be doing probably 50-50 corn and pumpkins, just because it's a quick, easy get in, go, not much labor on it. You're waiting for those, so you don't have to sit there and have every other day picking like tomatoes and peppers.
Yeah.
It's going to be set and forget until
I'll come
it's
back
ready
in the
for
fall.
harvest.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to go for that this year. And
Some
then
sweet corn?
Sweet corn, yeah.
Oh, my
Peaches
gosh.
and cream is one of my favorites. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Where it's like bicolor?
Yeah, it's a bicolor. I like bicolors, and I like whites. Good. There's a lot of good yellows out there, but I kind of stay with the bicolors. I feel like they usually are some of my favorite, because sometimes I'll just eat them in the field. They don't.
I was just
going to
say, when it's like that, you can just pop them right off and just shuck them right there and eat
it.
it.
A lot of different pumpkins. My kids are obsessed with pumpkin patches, and I feel like that's becoming a dime of a dozen around here with local people.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, there was always kind of mom and pop pumpkin patches here and there, and they seem to disappear. So if I could slightly bring that back a little bit, enough to where people could bring their kids over.
A neighborhood pumpkin patch.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
I love that. That'll be fun. So that's pretty incredible. What are you going to be doing right now? I noticed when we pulled up over here at Tomato Studios, you had a truckload full of compost. You're ready to rock. So let our listeners know, how important is the soil for the success of your garden? I've been to your farm, Neanderthal Farms, and it is anything but primitive or simple. I know you do no-till, and there's not a lot of machinery involved with your level of farming. But the produce you grow, I mean, come on, Austin, remember those tomatoes? I mean, your plants always look so vibrant and healthy. And so how do we achieve that for us, all of us normies out there who maybe aren't farming, but we want to garden like a farmer like you?
Yeah, I want to garden like Justin, where his tomato plants are just completely filled with tomatoes, like beyond what you think is possible.
They're healthy, they're pruned. When you walk on your soil too, it's almost like it gives under your step.
Spongy.
Yes.
It's like a wrestling mat almost, if anybody knows how that feels a little bit.
For
it's got
sure.
a little bit of give to it, but it's solid, but enough to where it kind of gives a little bit.
So how important is soil building, and what do you do, or what would you recommend to somebody to build their soil?
So usually if I have plots that have been ready for a couple years, we usually add a couple inches, 2 to 3 inches of a fresh compost layer twice a year, one in the winter, one in the spring.
Same.
And kind of let it do its thing, and it depends if we're growing root vegetables or not. But making sure that we're always giving back to how much we're taking away. So we're never taking too much from the soil and never giving it back. So you're always wanting to make sure that the amount of produce you're growing, say you're putting a heavy feeder like tomatoes or melons that are really going to draw that nutrient out of your soil, you've always got to remember, I got to give that back to the soil to make sure I have just as good health coming to the next season. So crop rotation's a big thing, making sure that you're not planting tomatoes in the same spot every season, because that's where you get a lot of disease and come in, so they can't really fight it. So mixing in different plants throughout the season, off seasons, is a big thing. But our biggest thing is healthy, good compost. Try to look around, look local. Even if you have to drive a little bit, it's worth every bit of getting a good, clean compost and looking in and asking the people, hey, what's the pH level on this? Because most of the places you get compost from, they have readings on their compost that could tell you if it's a hot compost or a cool compost, high pH, and then you can kind of go from there of what plants like. But really just making sure you add good compost and making sure that you're keeping the the health and fertility to the soil is the biggest thing for us.
Well, your farm shows that your plants definitely reveal that. And once we start amending the soil, other plants kind of work their way in. Have you noticed, especially now as the weather's kind of turning in a warmer direction? I've noticed in my own front yard. I meant to tell you,
talking
Austin.
weeds?
I got a few hours this last weekend to go, pull some weeds. I just noticed some Bermuda grass just popping up, and kind of just that first week of warm weather, it really kind of flourished in a couple little areas. Dug it up, removed it, got it out. So for me, getting rid of those is important. But I know for you, like when you have that beautiful soil, everything wants to attack it and grow in it. So how is it important for you to kind of keep back the weeds? And what do you do because we can't ever eradicate them completely, but it's about managing them. And what do you do to manage the weeds? Weed pressure.
Yeah, management's a big thing. Yeah, we've given up on the possibility of actually eradicating it 100%, especially Bermuda. When you bring that up, that's our biggest.
That's what I was pulling.
Yeah, that's our biggest issue up on our property. But over now 7-8 years of getting wood chips every season and trying to layer as heavy as possible on edge of walkways, edge of rows. The biggest thing is edging of rows and walkways in between your rows, because that's where weeds usually are. People don't think that's where they're going to congregate, but that's usually where they're going to go if you're not walking up and down them every day. So if you can keep those edges of your beds really, really tight down with at least 6 to 8 inches of wood chips, people think that's a little aggressive, but it really does help to snuff out the sunlight for those weeds that really thrive off of the littlest of life, like Bermuda grass.
Especially if those wood chips are like in a pathway
Exactly.
or a footpath. It's one thing if you're piling them up against your trees or your plants, but when it's in a pathway, like I said, when I did my weeds, Austin, at home, it wasn't that bad because they most of them, even though they were starting to spread, they were only in the surface of the wood chips. So once I started to kind of pull them,
they're easy to pull
they
out.
teased right up.
That's
and
cool.
Very few were actually even deeply rooted into actual soil. They were just trying to sprout and grow in what they could in the loose mulch, and so it made them come out all the easier.
What about straw, Justin? I remember you seeing a lot of straw on the ground. You utilize that as well, right?
We use a lot of straw, especially in our open, because we use straw, and then we have fabric cloth for certain rows, kind of a higher end, thicker woven plastic cloth. And it helps a lot for those certain rows that have a little bit more Bermuda issues than others. But when we are using straw, it does help with the moisture, keeping the moisture in the soil. And then it's going to break down. It's going to work its way, just like the wood chips. You see it as it's kind of a double whammy thing. It's gonna help keep the weeds down, and then it's going to break down and feed your soil. So it's always a win-win on both sides when it comes to any type of mulching with organic matter. So.
Good deal.
For sure. Well, you mentioned the watering issue and how the straw and mulch can help with that. But this is going to be, I'm going to ask you a tricky question, Justin, and this is kind of a difficult answer because people always ask you, well, how long do you water with your drip system? Do you use a drip system?
Yes, we do. Yep.
So people always like, well, how long do I run it? And maybe in a number of ways you can answer this because it's kind of a difficult question because maybe time really isn't the measurement, but I'd be curious to know what the time is. But how much, how long, and how wet? Like, what does it look like when you are watering? What's your regime for that?
So I could answer this in a way of how it works with our soil in our area, because that's going to be the biggest factor. Is what's your soil? How does it percolate? Does it drain well? What's your organic matter in there? How is that going to work out? What actual drip system you have? How much the emitters are going to be dripping out? So we run a 1/4 gallon per hour drip emitters. So meaning we have 6-inch spread on our lines. Every 6 inches is a little emitter on the drip line, and each emitter will produce a 1/4 gallon of water per hour of drip. So we kind of had to do a rough estimate. You got to watch it those first couple weeks. See what your soil's acting like. Really give it okay, is this enough? Do I need to add a half hour? Do I need to do less? Is it too saturated? Because that's the big thing. You don't want to oversaturate a plant. I don't know many plants that like living in soggy soil, but it's finding that right ratio for you and your property and your soil is a big thing. So for us, 1/4 gallon for us on our property works great, and we'll run it anywhere. It depends on the day, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then we'll maybe only do that twice a week. Because having that cover, even the straw or the plastic mulch over it, really retains that moisture, so we don't have to worry about evaporation so quick.
What about in the peak of summer? Is that still true? Or you start upping the
It's actually,
frequency?
So tomatoes, it's actually worse to overwater. That's how you're going to get mealy, kind of overly under flavored tomatoes when it comes to too much water. So you want to let them fight a little bit where those sugars could kind of work into the tomato, because at that point they're enough to have the plant living, but almost to where you want to have it struggle to where it wants to really push more nutrients into the fruit. It wants to keep its prized possession alive, but it's a fine line of not enough to just enough.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're really not changing the frequency as the season progresses?
No, it's pretty typical. Usually maybe 2 to 3 times a week we're turning that drip system on. Yeah. And then obviously some plots are different. Melons sometimes want a little bit more water in those hot days because they're producing 40-pound fruit that are 80% water. Yeah. So they take a little bit more, but it just depends on the crop. But usually tomatoes and stuff like that, cucumbers, we're usually around that range of maybe 2 to 3 times a week in about an hour.
I think that's a great point, because I think we get afraid of our plants not doing well. So we think, okay, I got to just soak this thing. That way it'll get its roots out and start growing. But we don't realize that plants can drown.
That's quite opposite. Yeah, when you get too wet, their roots don't have to search for water. So the more you give them a slight, not stressful, but a little bit of a, hey, we're not going to give you this much water, but you're going to have to search a little bit. That's when you get those roots really, really crawling out and wanting to find water. And that's how you're going to get a little bit of a bigger and better, strong root system, is when you're teasing them with enough water to just live, but enough to produce good fruit.
There we go. I love it. Because you see that a lot, too, where people run into issues with, like, blossom end rot, right? And it's calcium and whatnot, but it also has to do with watering as well.
Underwatering, overwatering. People, if you're not on drip system, not just shocking your plant with 10 gallons of water right away. You know, it's nice to give it a little ease. Maybe let it water, let it drain down, come back, check water a little bit, just a little bit at a time. It's better to, instead of washing out your whole kind of section of water going to your plant, especially in raised beds and containers.
Oh yeah. After watering, you said you do it twice a week, but how do you know that it's time to water again? Once you've fully saturated your soil, the plant's got their first drink, how do you know that it's time to water again? Are you looking at the soil? Are you waiting for it to dry out a little bit in between water? We always hear deep, infrequent. Is that part of the same kind of psychology?
So I watch the plants a lot. I'm always out there. I'm touching them, feeling them, always doing something. And you could, especially tomato, just not to focus just on tomatoes, but tomatoes, cucumbers, most plants will tell you when they want water. And you'll notice,
changes.
And it's usually the bigger the plant, the slower it takes. Kind of starts at the top and works. As smaller plants, you'll know immediately when you come out and they're flop down sleeping, you know. But that's usually when we're watching the water the most, is that younger stage. And then after that, it's pretty visible because their root bases are so established at that time that they're tapping into water that you could go down wrist deep and probably not hit moisture yet, but they're still tapping in a lot lower where moisture still is. So just keeping an eye on the plant, always watching, touching them, feeling them, because you'll feel the stalk on them or even the stem or the new growth. They'll feel floppy. Even if they don't look floppy, just feel it. You can feel that they're kind of needing a little moisture.
That loss of turgidity.
Always just watching the plants. I think the biggest thing is just always being out in the garden as much as possible. Really, really putting your foot in the path and being one with the plant is like the biggest stereotypical way to say it, but it is like, that's what's kept me, putting the hours in of learning, trial and error, what not to do and what to do.
Yep.
So.
You say the same thing.
Footsteps in the garden, man. That's the best thing. Just
Yeah.
your time. Because you'll notice things you weren't going to notice before, even if it's just a few minutes a day.
Yep. That's all it takes, man.
Yeah, you can kind of correct those mistakes and problems before they ever become an issue.
Yep.
I like the idea that those footsteps are keeping weeds down, too.
100%, man. It's even better when you're barefooted. Get the bare feet out there, man. He's really...
You garden barefoot?
Oh, man, yeah.
Really?
Oh,
That's awesome.
on, man. Try to as much as possible until I start getting some big old wood chips stab me in the foot.
Yeah.
Then I'm all right. Boots are going back on, man. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Garden staple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could probably remove some nutsedge and some Bermuda with my toenails.
Yeah,
Have you seen these things? I'm sharpen them up a little bit. It's like a bypass pruner.
Your foot scythe. Yeah.
So when it comes to tomatoes, what do you think are some of the best do's of tomato growing? What are the biggest things? Like, you got to do this. I know full sun, obviously, rich, well-drained soil. What are the things that you're doing that you think are going to bring you success?
I would say number one is plant deep as possible. A lot of people, more people are learning about it now, but tomatoes, if you had a 6 to 7 inch start, you could bury it all the way up to where you just have maybe 1.5 2 inches popping out, and that's going to be some of the healthiest plants because they will shoot out root bases from every node that they have.
Now, are
on
you
the plant.
snipping some of those lower branches?
Yes, cleaning them up all the way up to where you pretty much just have your main tip and then maybe two side lateral branches, and that's enough to get your plant going. They can usually even live off a couple, just 2 leaves on the top.
Now, are you burying yours straight in, or you do the curved approach?
Straight down.
Just
Keep it simple. I use one of those bulb diggers.
A dibble?
And I kind of get it down,
dibble.
working it down, and sometimes putting some mycorrhizae in the certain starts, but most of my rows they have it naturally in the soil now, after the years of work. So, but yeah, planting deep is huge, and then trellising is another huge one. A lot of people like cages. If you're doing it on a smaller scale, cages are phenomenal. But Florida weave is the way we do it.
Yeah, you're linear. You're in rows.
Yeah, linear rows is like the best way to do it, in my opinion. Even on a smaller scale, you could do, even on a raised bed, you could do Florida weave. It could be done.
Just a short little row.
Yeah,
from me
it
to
doesn't
you,
have to be
8
long.
feet.
But I feel like for me, it gives you the most bang for your buck, and it keeps you a healthy, happy plant without pests and overgrowth of vegetation, because we all know we ain't eating the tomato leaves. So,
Well, that's I wish. Come on, tomato breeders.
Yeah.
I want a delicious tomato that also has an edible leaf.
100% edible.
And
the whole
maybe
plant.
a root system as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I guess you see people graft the tomatoes onto the potatoes, but anyhow, that's pretty cool.
They do?
Yeah. You can graft a top of your plant could be a tomato, and you could graft it to a potato and have the root system
Oh
be
my God, I gotta look that up.
And people do grafting of tomatoes too, so they'll find like a really, really good root stock of like your typical big beefsteak that that's been around for years and healthy, and they have these little clips. And you could cut them with a razor blade. You cut them; they're only little baby seedlings.
Yeah.
And you clip the clip on the stalk, and you slide the guy in there, and it grafts right on there.
No way.
Yeah. So that's a big thing. You can look them up, but it's a big thing with breeding tomatoes too. So
That's cool.
yeah.
I love it. When you're spacing yours, and I know a lot of people are like, how far, how close, what's the best? When it comes to plant in your row, how far away are you planting your tomatoes?
So with our property, we actually push it 12 to 14 inches.
Keep it nice and
the
tight.
closest I've done is 12, and I've never had issues. But that also takes pruning, keeping up on the plant. So you're not going to have your typical overly bushed tomato. It's kind of look viney. You're going to have your
how many leads are you pruning it to? Is it one central like in a greenhouse, or do you let it get a few?
Yeah, I'll do that until about 4 or 5 feet, and then after that, I'll let it kind of run out on its end days, and then always keeping certain suckers cleaned up, so I'm not having too much weight on the Florida weave system, because you'd be surprised. You get 40 plants overgrown on one thing, they will tip over. It does not matter how tight your strings are or how big your T-posts are, they will fall over, and it's happened multiple times.
I had it happen the first year I did it, because I just did not have the strength. And we had a bit nice spring wind, wind came in, a little windstorm, and it was like a big sail. It just caught it. Yep. But I've learned since then.
Yeah, but big thing is just keeping them pruned up. I think that's the number one, really.
And so and then are you cutting all the lower branches once the growth has kind of exceeded that as well?
Yeah, so about every foot of growth, I'll take 2 lateral branches off. So usually at the end of, say, a 8 to 10 foot plant, if they get that tall, which they totally can.
I've seen yours. Yep.
I'm usually close to my kneecap, so maybe 2 feet, of cleaned main stalk, and it could go even farther up. It just depends on how big the plant is at the time. But usually a foot of growth, I take 2 or 3 lateral. But you're watching the plant too. You don't want to take too much off where you're stressing the plant out. They do need that, especially during the summertime. And a little shade on bigger tomatoes is amazing in the sun if you're not doing a shade cloth.
Yeah.
So it's almost nice on those bigger tomatoes to have a little bit more vegetation on them to keep them a little shaded up during the summertime. Because if not, you just have these huge tomatoes just ready to get roasted by the good old Sacramento sun. So,
all right. So you plant yours pretty close. How far apart are their actual rows then?
Rows are 24 to 36 inches apart.
Okay.
So most of usually 36 inches, just to give you a good walkway. Working in there is never fun. I've done them tight, and it makes it a little complicated, getting some harvest baskets in there and trying not to shoulder everything and knock new tomatoes off. And so usually about 36 inches space-wise. Yep.
Cool.
I got a question on orientation for the rows. I've just ran into thinking about this for my own community garden plot. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if you run yours north, south, east, west, or is there, does it not matter to you?
So our property works the best north south. So that's how we have ours. It seems to be the easiest for us on the sunwise, and then some plots are opposite. We have some areas that are a little hilly, so we kind of work with the area of the ground. So you're not having one top area getting a lot of water and the other area kind of
Right.
getting no water. So that's what works with our property.
Yeah, at the school is the same. Ours are running because we get full sun, so the sun kind of just perfectly, east
So
to
you
west.
go north-south.
And so ours are north to south. So that way both sides
Are getting
equal amount of sun for the most part.
Right on.
Yep.
What are some of your favorite tomato varieties? Every time we go out there, I know you've teamed up. You're just a wild little piglet. You're a wild boar, bad boy. And but what are some of your favorite ones that you grew last year? Are there any that are that are new and interesting to you, or what are your your tried and true favorites?
So I'm gonna be pretty straightforward here. I'd say Solar Flare wins at number one for me most of the time. It's
It's
consistent.
a pretty tomato.
Consistent flavor-wise, production-wise. It's probably one of my number one sellers when it comes to slicers.
Really?
Visually, it's amazing. And then, of course, you got the Berkeley tie-dye. I'm a slicer fiend. I love all my tomatoes, but when it comes to tomato season, I look forward to a nice big slicer. Obviously, Berry's Crazy is
That one's wild.
it's
how
always a
productive.
Fun, yeah, it's always a fun one because I never know how many we're gonna get and how big the trusses are. And I mean, last 2 years ago,
One branch will have a couple hundred individual cherry-sized little teardrop yellow tomatoes, and they're delicious.
Yeah, Brad came over a couple years back, and I had a truss that was holding. We did a video and we counted them 362 tomatoes on one truss.
Nice.
Off of Berry's Crazy. So that was a record for him. So nobody's beat that one yet. So
There we go.
everybody out there, there's a good challenge for you. Get yourself a Berry's Crazy cherry tomato at Green Acres and see how big of a truss you can grow.
Yeah, that one's very productive. I'm loving it. It's interesting to see all the different varieties that have been coming out these past few years, and it's like I feel like each and every season there's something new. I always love my tried and true favorites, the classics as it were. But it's kind of cool to see what people are doing with just more effort, more energy in the garden. The breeding is really coming out with some incredible genetics for these plants.
Well, there's a ton of wild boar tomatoes now available at all the Green Acre stores, and we grow them at Isley's, and there's just so many different ones now. It wasn't like that a few years ago.
No.
So this is like pretty cool.
Yeah,
People have access to this now.
And he's dropped a lot of new ones this year too. I think he put at least 4 or 5 new varieties out this year, which is a big thing, because that takes years and years and years. A lot of people don't understand that it's
Right.
a lot of seed popping and a lot of checking and walking the field. And I've been lucky enough to be able to go out with him on some of his fields and pick for weekends and bringing thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of tomatoes up to when you're hauling in 5-gallon buckets all day of just every tomato, it's overwhelming for somebody. Even when I grow as many as I do, it kind of makes me feel like, wow, I'm a little land on the surface here,
Yeah, I went out to a big scale farm to see where they were growing all the production tomatoes, the processing tomatoes for canning and jarring, and it was pretty impressive, just the scope and scale. But when I looked at the tomatoes, they were beautiful and they were delicious looking, but they're all processing tomatoes, so they're all destined to be in a can, which is kind of cool because the freshness is locked. That's the one way you can do it, but it's not a slicing tomato.
No.
And so in my head, I'm thinking, you know what? There's still purpose in my garden, at the school, at my home, to grow those fresh, seasonal, just expertly ripe slicing tomato, like you mentioned. Just something about it.
Those are transportation tomatoes, as we like to call them.
Yeah.
They're bred for one thing. How long can we stay in the field without getting messed up and eaten by a bug? And then how long can we last from the truck ride to here without getting bruised up and smashed up? So
Yeah,
yeah.
Priority is not taste.
Taste is not a part of the priority.
they're
there,
tougher. Yeah, they just
Yeah.
have it's not a eating tomato, not a fresh one.
Have either of you guys done the sweet cream cherry tomatoes?
I have not.
Okay, I noticed those are available now, and I've been meaning to. I'm thinking about growing that one.
Well, try it
adding
out,
that
man.
to the mix. Yeah.
You never know. It might be your new favorite tomato,
Maybe.
man. That's how I started. I didn't really know much about wild boar tomatoes until about 7 or 8 years ago, and then once he moved up here to Sacramento and becoming good friends with him, it blew my mind because I only knew a couple, the Berkeley tie-dye and even though Cherokee Purple's not his, but I knew the typical kind of heirloomy, different color.
Yeah.
Whoa, what is this? And then once meeting him and getting into that, it was overwhelming.
He's
for
like,
the
you ever
first
had a
year.
blue tomato?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It was
You're like,
overwhelming
okay.
the first year, and then being able to go out to the field like I was mentioning and being able to just trial and taste tomatoes that it's like you almost don't want to eat a tomato after the end of the day because you're just walking down the aisle trying one here, one here, one here. And
What's your favorite way to eat a tomato?
I gotta say just a tomato sandwich. Yeah. White bread,
Yeah.
good white bread or good sourdough, which my wife makes amazing sourdough now. So
There
I'm
we
lucky
go.
enough to have the homemade sourdough
Got
with
the
a
yeast.
good thick sliced tomato, salt and pep, and heavy mayo. And
Yeah,
I'm
keep
a
it
happy guy.
simple.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, that sounds so good.
So, can I ask you, Justin, about pickles? I know you're
Of course,
the pickle
man.
king.
Bring it on.
He was
And-
born the pickle prince.
He grew up and became
Yeah,
the pickle
yeah.
king. I figure you're the one to ask about growing cucumbers. What do you recommend for pickling and best methods for cucumber growing?
Yeah, of course, man. So this year we're actually growing 4 or 5 new varieties that we haven't grown. A bunch of F1 varieties,
Hybrids.
some hybrid varieties. So we're doing a lot of new ones this year, and we're going kind of the opposite of more cucumbers to tomatoes this year. Since big news, we're actually getting the license and canning license for the pickling business this year.
Oh, congrats,
exciting.
man.
Patiently waiting for California to get back to us.
So pretty
They're-
soon you'll be able to legally sell me a can of
Yes, and even you
pickles?
might see them at your local Rayleigh's or deli market. So
There we go.
we're really trying to work at big numbers
awesome.
there, and then having that big section of land is a huge one for us. So we'd be able to keep up with the production.
Nice. And it's Wetzel's.
a Wenzel.
Wenzel.
You were there. You're almost
Okay,
there.
I was
yeah.
close.
Yeah, Wenzel's pickles. And so I would say for the best way to growing cucumbers is always trellised if you have an option to trellis them, just because you're not going to deal with blemishes and bugs. Pill bugs love cucumbers. I've had an issue with them boring into them.
And if it's on the ground, they get to it.
And then you kind of get that where you get a white side of a cucumber. If you ever get
yeah.
a pickle sometimes, like, why is it all green and this whole side's kind of pale? Usually grown into a row, which is totally fine on a massive scale. But for us, we like to keep ours as pretty as possible. And it's a little bit more visually easier to pick and easier on the back. You're not bending over to a row, shuffling through those prickly leaves,
Right.
trying to find a good cucumber. They're kind of just dangling right there for you to grab. You can keep an eye on, okay, I know tomorrow or the next day I'm going to pick. But yeah, good trellis, get a good netting of some type, or you could do the single string method. But I usually like doing a 4-inch square, like a plastic or kind of a
like a cattle paddle or
yeah,
something.
exactly. Those are nice. Just a little bit more pricier, unless you're doing on the small scale. Cattle panel is phenomenal, but you can get the trellis netting, usually 4-inch squares.
Yep.
They come in, and that works great for us. 6 to 7 feet tall T-posts, and kind of get them set up. But there's multiple ways you can grow cucumbers. That's a great thing.
Okay, and then I think another key thing is when to pick, right? Like
Yes.
you're going early for pickling.
Yeah.
But would you always pick pretty early, or does it change?
So for us, we like to get ours in the smaller range just because we do holes in our jar. So it's easier to fit as many as we can into a jar. And then we usually let some go bigger for the slices and for the spears. So it's an option. You wouldn't want a small pickle to try to cut up into slices and spears. So it's always we'll have a row or two for strictly slices. And then if they get away from us, then I know, hey, I'm not losing. They're just going to go to another spear or slice batch.
it.
But we like to keep them within that 1.5 inch, 2-inch range. Yeah.
Very cool.
I love it. What's going on when pickle or in cucumbers when you are bitter? What's happening there?
So that could be a big thing of underwatering, overwatering, stress
Yeah.
on the plant, real big stress on the plant, and then nutrient intake. You could have some type of deficiency of nutrients, which could be calcium, potassium.
I've got multiple deficiencies,
Yeah.
but they're just mostly psychological.
I don't think I've
physical.
had
Yeah.
a bitter
Yeah.
Cucumber. Did you say bitter cucumber?
I think
Yeah.
I've just seen it
So
in
the
the
pickling-
forums. People
yeah.
go, "Oh, why are my cucumbers bitter?"
Sounds horrible.
Yeah, so sometimes a lot of people like to grow the burpless, your typical English burpless.
It's all smooth.
Yeah,
and-
those are really hard to get bitter. But when you start getting into the smaller pickling varieties, there's a reason why they're meant to pickle. They're thicker skin. They're a little drier inside. Not as, I wouldn't say dry to wet, but not like your typical cucumber when you're cutting up a nice slicer, kind of juicy. You got the seeds in there. And they have thicker walls on them. So they're usually meant to be pickled for a main reason. They've been bred over the years to be to hold up to the brine. And there are varieties out there that are pickling varieties that are really good for slicing and pickling. But most of the varieties we grow are usually not going to be in the younger days when we're picking them. They're still going to have a slight bitter quality to them, which they lose that when they're pickled.
Interesting.
So,
I didn't know.
There we go.
I just love pickles.
Yeah.
Yes, dude,
Don't we
me
all?
too. Come on, bring him on. That's why I'm excited to see his
I want to
your
see
farm
the jars
expand.
in the stores.
I can't wait to see. Yeah, if we can see that in finished product, it's gonna be so cool. Got me thinking too. It's like I know you're big into permaculture a little bit, and I know. So how has that been in your community? I know you've reached out to other members in your community that are into that same kind of vibe of trying to grow as much food sustainably, organically, local. I know we didn't talk about it, but Neanderthal Farms is an organic farm.
Yes.
Yeah, your produce is organic.
Yes.
You're not using any synthetic pesticides or fertilizers.
Nope.
So how has that been? How's the permaculture working? Is that are you noticing good things?
Yes, ever since I learned about it about 10, 11 years ago from a good friend of mine, it's been nothing but great, for us on the property, and then getting to people and teaching them how to build soil is like one of the happiest things for me, because you always see the light in their eyes, like, wait, I can do that? And then they come back next year, that was the best plants I've ever grown. And it's so simple, it's so less work, and it just works with you. Once you get the soil working, you don't have to do the work. The soil does the work for you. But yeah, community-wise, it's been great. We got a couple good local friends, the one that helped me, Fair Oaks Permaculture. They've been doing a lot of local little groups once a month in Old Fair Oaks. So it's getting to the community and actually letting people know a little bit more what permaculture is and how easy it is. And I mean, it's easy and hard at the same time, but what isn't hard nowadays?
Yeah.
So
anything decent takes effort.
exactly.
Typically.
So, but just getting to the people, and especially sometimes it's great seeing like the older community get in there, and their eyes are like, what? They're like me. I was so old school. I thought just rototill, wait for one season, rototill. They don't understand the building soil and the compost and what it does and how much it benefits you, and then nutrient value of what you're eating in the food. That's a lot of people don't understand is the better, healthier soil, the more nutrients, that's going to give you the more nutrient value to your food you're actually consuming.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's like if your soil is rich, the food tends to be a little bit more nutrient dense.
And that's why I think usually our tomatoes and stuff have such good flavors, because what's actually feeding the tomatoes is you're getting the sugars and all the good stuff in there. And then other than just a waterlogged, bland tomato that was just grown to get to the shelves and stay there as long as possible. So.
Well, I'm curious, Justin, if somebody was listening to you right now and they're maybe on the edge of maybe starting their very first garden, or maybe even expanding their garden into something kind of like yours where it becomes more than just a home garden, it becomes like a little micro farm, what would be your words of encouragement or words of wisdom for somebody who's maybe starting things out and wants to do something similar?
I think I've said it probably the last time. It's easy for me to say. It's just you got to push yourself more than what you think you can do, especially if you're wanting to do it for more than just yourself or your family or friends. It's a lot easier than you think, but then, like I said, it takes a lot of hard work and effort to get into it. But once you get into it, I feel like it's a one-on-one you and nature kind of deal, and then it just flows naturally. Once you get, okay, I understand, but you're never going to be perfect every season. There's always going to be fails. I don't know one farmer or friend that does it on a big scale or small scale that doesn't come to me every year and say, yeah, didn't do well this year on this, but next year and then you just kind of learn. Okay, teeter-totter. And then we'll go from here, and then we'll kind of trial and error from here. But I think that's the biggest thing. You got to really just push yourself to the limits of wanting to really expand and try new things. Don't stick to the norm. Don't, hey, I just want to do this. It works good for me. But if that's the case, then stick with it. But if you want to really expand, you got to really, really go out there and maybe I'll try these different cucumbers this year, or maybe I'll try this trellising method a little different, or maybe I won't add that nutrients. It didn't really work more last year. Let's try this method. Then you'll find your route, and you'll find what works with you, your property, your soil, and just you in person. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great advice. I loved it. Justin Davis, the Pickle King, once the Pickle Prince of Neanderthal Farms, urban farmer extraordinaire, dad, husband, just all around good guy. Justin, thank you so much for making time, schooling us up a little bit. Actually, I really want to get out. If we can, Austin, we got to get out there, I think, and film we got to film a proper video.
Oh, we need to make a visit to Neanderthal Farms.
Maybe later this spring when things are popping a little bit.
Please come by.
At that first harvest, maybe, early June.
Yeah, I want to see where the expansion's happening.
It's going to be big. It'll be a lot different than when you guys came by the last time. So maybe I'll have a lunch ready for you guys and we'll all hang out. So
maybe
that would be sick. All right, yeah. So check him out.
Yeah.
The Pickle King of Wenzel's Pickles.
Yes, sir.
Soon, hopefully, we'll see more of that as well.
Yes.
Where can the folks find you on the Instagrams?
So right now we are strictly on Neanderthal Farms on Instagram.
Here we go.
I do have a personal page on Facebook just under Justin Davis. So if you want to get a hold of me on there, it's just my personal, but I could answer questions. I haven't got to the point of making one for Facebook yet, but
that's cool.
Yeah, Neanderthal Farms. You could message me, anybody. I'm always here to give free answers, and I want to see people succeed. So I'm here for the people in the community. So anybody got questions or anything, or want to come by and tour the property and see what we do, I'm always open. Just give me a message and we'll work something out.
That's awesome. That's a great way to learn. Justin, thank you so much. What does your wife think about all your garden adventures?
She loves it, man. Come on. That's who wouldn't want to come home to fresh vegetables and fruit and chickens and all that fun stuff, man. It's living off the land. It's the American dream, and we're living in it now.
Oh yeah, she sounds like a keeper. But
12 years together, man. We ain't going anywhere.
There we go. Yeah. I love it. Justin Davis, the Pickle King of Neanderthal Farms. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Well, I think that does it for this week's Garden Friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Justin is an amazing guy, incredible person. If you've seen his garden farm in real life, I mean, you would be blown away by it. It's absolutely amazing. So thank you to Justin, our guest, and thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in each week. Please come back for more. We're going to have another great episode next week. The good times are going to keep flowing. This is going to be an amazing spring and summer, and I don't want you to miss out. So whether your garden is small or it's an amazing micro farm like Neanderthal Farms, it doesn't matter. You just got to get out there and try, garden, grow a little bit. Until next week, garden friends, happy gardening to you all, and please
never stop growing.